Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I am glad to join this discussion. I know there has been a lot of conversations around the coordinated efforts that the fossil fuel companies have put together to create and spread this information about climate change. As we heard earlier in 1998, the American Petroleum Institute, or API, assembled a global climate science communication team comprised of fossil fuel companies and front groups working to coordinate a misinformation campaign surrounding climate change. Mr. Wright, the action plan says, quote, Sharon Nice of Chevron was a member of the Global Climate Science Communication Team, correct?
Congresswoman, I appreciate the question.
It's just yes or no, sir.
I'm not familiar with the instance you're referring to, and so I don't have any knowledge of that.
All right. Mr. Woods, the action plan also says, quote, Randy Rondal of Exxon was a member of the team. Do you agree?
I don't know about that. That was several decades ago. And
okay. So on page 2 of the April 3, 1998 action plan says that these employees were listed as members who contributed to the development of the plan. In 1998, the Global Climate Science Communication Team produced, quote, action plan outlining a strategy to conduct a coordinated misinformation campaign on climate change. Mr. Woods, an Exxon employee, was involved in developing this plan, this action plan, right?
As I said, I'm not familiar with that activity. It was 20 years ago. So
okay, and Mr. Wright, is that the same for you? Do you know if these employees were involved in creating this action plan?
I don't have information about the instance that you are making reference to, Congresswoman.
Okay. Again, on page 2 of that action plan lists these employees. The plan explained that, quote, victory, end quote, would be achieved when, quote, average citizens understand uncertainties in climate science, end quote, and recognition of that uncertainty, quote, becomes part of the conventional wisdom. We've heard today that Exxon executives were warned about the reality of the climate change as early as the 1970s. As we know, API shared information within the industry about the dangers of climate change. Yet both of your organizations contributed to a plan to inject doubt and uncertainty into the climate debate. Mr. Simmons, yes or no, did the Global Climate Science Communication Team achieve victory as it was laid out in that action plan?
Congresswoman, I'm not familiar with what you're referring to. In 1998, I was 23 years old. I came to API in 2018 and focused on the climate challenge.
As I study the history of the institution I participate in, I am sure you do as well. But it seems very clear that they did. The fossil fuel industry worked collectively to prevent action on climate change. They coordinated their campaigns with groups like the Global Climate Science Communication Team. Their efforts at disinformation were conscious and deliberate. Over the past 3 decades, the fossil fuel industry has continued their efforts by making $780 million in political donations, with 80% of those donations going to Republicans. In 2020 alone, the industry made $139 million in donations to candidates and committees, of which 84% went to Republicans and mostly climate deniers. It is yet another reason we need to get the fossil fuel money out of our politics. Fossil fuel companies have polluted our air, land, and water for profit, despite knowing the devastating impact it has on our companies. It seems like you all have achieved that victory of leading the public with this information. And as one of my colleagues said earlier, I hope that you are ashamed of the future that you contributed for your children and for ours. And I ask all of you to resign. With that, I yield back, Madam Chairwoman.